student to take those courses. They want to make sure the student has completed all of those courses, and they would like to have those courses completed with them, within their laboratory, within their classroom. So, for example, at the University of Arkansas, a transfer graduate student can only submit 6 transfer credit hours. So really only 2 classes will transfer at the graduate level. Um, I have worked with students who there might be some more flexibility within a certain program depending upon what the faculty member decides, but that really is a decision left to the department in which the student is applying. But I will say for the most part, all I really see for a graduate student is that 6 credit hour transfer. So it is harder for a graduate student to discuss the transfer process just because there's not a lot of flexibility. And if they are halfway through their graduate program, there really is going to be a lot of lost course credit and a lot of time lost because they will be beginning their studies essentially back as a first-year graduate student. So now that you know the definition of what it means to be a transfer student, maybe you're wondering why. Why should I transfer? I mean, there's a couple of reasons, and students I've worked with have told me a couple of reasons why they have approached the transfer process. Maybe they're unhappy with their current institution, and unfortunately that happens. Whether that's due to, the courses that are being offered are not fitting what they thought would be appropriate for their program or what they ultimately want to do as a career. Maybe their degree is completely not offered. I mean, maybe you're working with an institution, you're a student at an institution where electrical engineering isn't even an option. So obviously that student who wants to pursue that degree would not want to continue on with that university. Cost, that's a very big factor for students who are transferring. Maybe that changes from year to year, obviously. For a student who is pursuing a degree somewhere, they need to find a cheaper option, or maybe they now have more flexibility where they can pursue a degree at a university that has a higher price tag. But that is a deciding factor. Limited courses, degrees not offered, we just discussed that. Life changes, obviously, you have to move. A family member has been offered a job, and you have to move and complete your degree somewhere else. I work with many students who are in that situation. Also, working to improve their grade point average, so their GPA. Something to mention, when you transfer, especially as a transfer student, as we just discussed, your GPA starts over. It's fresh. So I will have students who are transferring from a community college to the 4-year institution, and they get a fresh start with their GPA. Okay. So now in that process of thinking about transferring. So you want to make sure you're making the right transfer. You're making the right decision for you. There's going to be a couple things that I suggest you look at. First is accreditation. You want to make sure that the degree you'll be receiving is from an accredited university. That's going to be very important later on in your career search, and when you go on to maybe pursue a master's degree. Most master programs must see a degree is from an accredited university. So you'll find that information on any university website. They'll have the accreditation listed, and a lot of times they'll have the program accreditation listed as well. But I would encourage you to look for that when looking at degree programs. You want to make sure that your program is offered at that university. You want to make sure that you're going to find that degree at the institution. If you want to be an electrical engineer, they have to have an electrical engineering program. You're going to look at cost, which is a big deciding factor for many of the students I work with. Size, you want to, maybe you want to go to an institution, a larger university, or maybe you want to go to a smaller private institution. You want to look at the size, classroom size, faculty to student ratio. That's an important factor. And location, where do you want to live? Maybe you want to live in a large metropolitan area, or maybe you would like to live in a more quiet area. That's also going to be a big deciding factor as well. Rankings. I know this is very important to students. So not only look at the university ranking, but I strongly encourage you to look at the program ranking. So maybe that university isn't ranked top 100 in the world, but they have a top 100 program. For that university, that's a very top niche for them. So looking at those program rankings and the faculty within those programs is going to be really helpful. You want to look at student services and resources. So that's going to be housing, academic support, like the tutoring we discussed, campus safety. That's a question I get often, how safe is the campus? And extracurricular activities, student organizations, intramural sports. You're going to be studying at this university, but you're also going to be living in that area. You want to make sure that you love the area, that there's a lot to do outside of the classroom as well. Oh, the student to faculty ratio that I just discussed. Do you want a smaller classroom? Do you want larger lectures? Those are things to consider. And also articulation agreements. There might be an agreement with your college or community college or institution with that university in which you're applying. So there might already be a conditional admission set up within those colleges, that articulation agreement, for example. And that might be something to discuss with an advisor from either college or university, but those do exist, and if they do, that can be very beneficial to the student. Okay, so the application process. This is going to be pretty much a generic application process you're going to see across the board. There might be some differences depending upon the individual institution in which you apply, but this is going to be very common. You're going to see most of these requirements. Most universities are going to require you to submit an online application. As I am in this field and I see it changing, most application processes are online. So just be prepared that most of it is going to be online. You're going to submit a lot of the documents online. There's really not going to be a lot of physical mail that you have to send. Most of it is going to be online. So you're going to submit an online application. I do see there's a paper application listed there, but 95% is online. There's going to be an application processing fee, and that varies depending upon universities. You're going to also have to submit those academic records. So your transcripts, those will have to be submitted. And like we discussed, depending upon the type of transfer student you are, you might have to submit high school mark sheets. You might have to submit your transfer transcripts from your university or college. So just keep that in mind, depending upon the type of transfer, what type of academic records do I need to submit. You're also going to have to submit some test scores. Again, maybe you do or you do not have to submit TOEFL or SAT, but keep that in mind. And for graduate students, the GRE will be required for most programs, so keep that in mind as well. Statement of purpose and academic objectives. This is fairly common across the application process for most universities. Now, whether that's required for admission or scholarship, it depends upon the university, but you're going to most likely see a statement of purpose needed. Letter of recommendation. It might just be one letter or multiple, maybe up to 2 or 3. But a lot of times they want to see these letters of recommendation coming from the former faculty, a teacher, a counselor, a headmaster. They want to have this letter of recommendation coming from someone who can speak of your academic background. So be thinking about that. The copy of your name page of your passport, that's going to be universal. Most institutions will need to have that. That's usually something you can just scan and upload. And then there will be the financial information, which I usually call the proof of finances. And that will be to issue the I-20 document. And that's going to be across the board as well. And those forms are going to look different from institution to institution, but it's ultimately collecting the same information, and it's going to be needed for most institutions, or for all institutions, honestly. Okay, so some transfer student considerations. And these are just some things to keep in mind as you start thinking about the transfer process. You might be able to submit your transcripts from the previous or current institution ahead of time to that institution in which you're applying. Now, I'm just going to speak, for example, from the University of Arkansas. We do have someone in our office who can look at these transcripts prior to applying, so without using WES or any other type of transcript service. Now, this is dependent upon this person's flexibility within their schedule, because they do this outside of working hours. But that might also be the case at other universities as well. So most of the time, when a student is applying, they're submitting those transcripts, and the evaluation is done in-house within the university. And so it's usually after they've been admitted that they'll know the transferable credit hours. But look at other institutions and see if you can find this service within that institution in which you're applying. But there's also other services like WES that can provide this information for you. But you will have to submit your transcripts from the previous institution, like we just discussed. A lot of times, the institution will ask for a detailed course description or a syllabi from your previous coursework, especially at the college level. They ask for this because the credential evaluators who are going to be evaluating your transcripts, this really helps them to determine if those credits, so maybe you took a math course. They want to make sure that math course is going to transfer to their university, and they want to make sure that you were actually learning the same material that that course at the university in which you're applying offered. So they just want to make sure ultimately that that course transfers, that you completed that course and you did the same work that the course at the university in which you're applying completed. That's what that means. They just want to make sure that it's going to transfer. You also want to know, will that credit be awarded towards your degree? So that's really important. So just because that course transfers, check we have that course at our university, you want to make sure that that course is going towards your actual degree program. Because you don't want to take multiple courses and it not go towards your degree. That would just be a waste of time overall. So that's going to be important. You want to make sure that that is going to actually transfer and be applicable to your academic degree. It is true that private universities have more flexibility than public universities, only because they get to set that criteria and that curriculum. So there is more flexibility there. So that's something to keep in mind. Oh, like I just discussed, this is some other considerations. Some institutions, they're able to evaluate your transcripts for credit transfer prior to the application process. Like I said, this can be done, and I would encourage you to seek that out. When you're starting to apply to other universities, maybe they can actually evaluate your transcripts prior to you applying, which will be really helpful. If they cannot, that's okay. You're going to submit your transcripts, and that will be done during the admission process. So the articulation agreements, so those do often exist between the community colleges and the four-year universities within the same state, and that is very true for us here in Arkansas. So we do have many articulation agreements for a lot of the surrounding community colleges where many of the transfer students are coming from, only because we are working with those community colleges so often that it makes sense for us to have those agreements because we know what those courses are going to be transferring into. So generally, there are more courses taken prior to transferring. The less interested in standardized test scores, and the institution will be less interested in those high school transcripts like we talked about. So you will not have to submit those if you have more than 24 transferable credit hours. And they may not need the English proficiency requirement, TOEFL or IELTS, if you have more than your 24 transferable credit hours. So a big takeaway I hope you take away from this is that it's really important to plan ahead. There's a lot of things that you can do to start thinking about the transfer process. And a little tip, I would say, if you are thinking about transferring, I know that can happen last minute, and I do work with students who are in that situation. But if transferring is something you're thinking about now, I would encourage you to start planning ahead and honestly give yourself about a year's timeline to do so. That's going to give you the best options regarding scholarships, because there are transfer scholarships for students. And that's also just going to give you enough time to prepare for the admissions process. So that would be a big takeaway, I think. But also start talking with the academic advisors to your planning, the school in which you're planning to apply to. So for example, if you're applying to the University of Arkansas, you can start that process with me. I can help you through the application process, the scholarship process, and all universities and institutions are going to have as academic advisors that you can talk to prior to submitting an application. And they're going to walk you through the process. Learn as much as you can about that university. Not only about the academics, but what's it like in that area, in that town, what are there to do socially for you, and learn as much as you can about that institution in that area prior to transferring. And a lot of that information is going to be found on the university website. This is a big one. There's usually a maximum number of credit hours that can transfer. So a student who's transferring, for example, in their junior year, it's going to be very important for them to start that conversation with the university, because there will be a maximum of credit hours. So you can't transfer your senior year and expect to graduate in a year, because even though the university wants to work with transfer students, they also want to make sure that most of those credit hours were taken within that university. So that is something to discuss. Make sure you know that maximum number before you start the transfer process, because it would be really unfortunate for you to lose a lot of your credit hours just because you transferred in late. Institutions, they will have a minimum grade point average required for students to transfer. That's going to be across the board, and that's going to vary. You might see anything from a 2.0 GPA to a 3.5 GPA, and that also will be determined by the program in which you're applying as well. So there could be a university requirement, and there could be a program requirement for that GPA. So keep that in mind. And if you're transferring from one U.S. institution from another, for example, community college to a four-year institution, your CBIS record will need to be transferred as well. And that's something I work with students often with. Okay, so here's just some quick transfer tips to keep in mind as you start this process. The first one, I would encourage you, regardless if you are a transfer freshman or you're a transfer student, or even a graduate student who's thinking about transferring those 6 credit hours, so important to maintain a high GPA, because that is going to be the most important determining factor for admission and for scholarship, like I mentioned. And especially if you are in that transfer student boat. So if you've completed more than 24 transferable credit hours, really the university is only going to be looking at that GPA to determine admission and scholarships. So it's so important that you're maintaining a high GPA. And it's something else to keep in mind. This is a fresh start for you from high school. So regardless of where you're at in the transfer process, if you are really working towards transferring after becoming a transfer student, you get a fresh start from the GPA. So that's something to consider. Transfer tip number 2, you want to make sure you're finding the best fit for you regarding the university or institution. So that's either the degree program structure. So you want to make sure that program, for example, electrical engineering, you want to make sure those courses are courses that you want to take. Well, those are courses that you think are going to be beneficial towards your career post-graduation. So really look at that degree program structure. Rankings. We discussed this, but really look at program rankings, not just university rankings, because you might miss out on a top 30 program just because it's not in a top 100 university. So really look at those program rankings as well. Student to faculty ratio, Do you want to go into large lectures every day, or do you want to go into small lectures, or do you want to mix? Looking at that student to faculty ratio is going to let you know what those classroom sizes are like, what those laboratories are like for research, and that'll be really helpful. Cost and size, cost is a large determining factor for many of the international students that I work with. So you're going to find that information on most university websites. Can you live on campus, or do you need to be finding an apartment? Those are things to consider, and those are big deciding factors for many international students. In social life, like I mentioned, you're going to be living here, and it's really important that the time outside of your academic studies that you're happy. So you want to make sure that it's an area that you can find exciting things to do, that you enjoy, and that you have that balance of academic life and social life. You're going to want to look at student services. So what type of student services do they offer for international students? That's going to be very important. Looking at orientation and programming for international students, but also academic services as well, such as libraries, laboratories, and those student services and academic services like tutoring. And also extracurricular activities. Student organizations are very prevalent on my campus, and they're really important to students. So what type of extracurricular activities and intramural sports are offered at that institution? So I think by looking at each of these points individually and collectively as a list, it's really going to help you to determine what type of institution you want to attend. Okay, so I would encourage you to also check to see if the university has a transfer course equivalency guide. So I know we discussed that maybe the institution will look at your transcripts prior to application, maybe they will not, but you will find that a lot of institutions have these course equivalency guides. So by entering the 2-year college, the 4-year college, you'll click on that arrow and you'll be able to see a list. It is a very long list because it's international institutions and domestic institutions. And see if your institution is listed on there. By clicking on your institution, that will bring up all of the transfer courses that that university has worked with. So for example, I have ours listed here. So I'm just going to mention a community college that I've been working with recently, Shoreline Community College in the Seattle area. So for students who've done that from Shoreline Community College, they will find that listed there. They will then be able to pull up all of the transfer courses that we have personally worked with within our university. So we know by looking at those courses, for example, this math course is going to transfer as this math course. It's going to have the course name listed. It's going to have the description. So you know, okay, I don't need to worry about that. That's going to transfer. And that's also going to transfer into my degree program. So this is going to be a very, very helpful guide, and I would encourage you to look for that across the board for all institutions. This is an important one. Make a list of all deadlines, and that's admission and scholarships. You're going to find that information on the university website, but I would encourage you, you're going to be applying to many institutions. Make a list of all those deadlines so you don't miss out on any opportunities, because it's so unfortunate when I work with a student who they're going to meet the admission deadline, but scholarship is very important to them, and they just missed the scholarship deadline by a week. If they just would have applied a little sooner, or they just would have known about the deadline, they would have been a great candidate for scholarship. So I don't want you to fall into that category. So just plan ahead, especially if you're thinking within that year-long window, and make a list of all those deadlines, and it's going to be really helpful. If you're thinking about the transfer process, you are already a student who is working with professors and faculty members. And I would encourage you to create those professional relationships with them because they're going to be the ones who are writing the letter of recommendation. And while GPA is probably the most important determining factor for transfer students, those letter of recommendations, especially for scholarship consideration, are going to be evaluated very heavily as well. And so it's important that you're working with those faculty and professors now. You will start creating those relationships, and that's going to help you to have a successful letter of recommendation. This is something I encourage students to do as well. Start writing your personal essay early because this personal statement, personal essay, statement of objectives, however it's classified, this is going to let the university know about you and your career goals and why you want to study that institution. They're going to look at that to see, okay, will this student be a good fit at our university? And so don't just write it the night before, write it, proofread it, have someone else, look it over, and then maybe even rewrite it again with their suggestions and tips. You also want to make sure that you're following the length requirement. So maybe there is a scholarship personal essay requirement and it can only be 600 words. You don't want to go over by 200 words or under. You want to make sure you're at that 600 word mark. And also check to see if there are any topics that are listed as as a suggestion. Because a lot of times a university will have a topic suggestion. So they want you to cover a specific topic, or maybe there's 2 or 3 topics that you can choose from. So definitely look into that. Here's just a list of a couple of resources that I use to create the presentation, but that's really it. That's all I have regarding the transfer application process. There's my contact information if you have any other questions. But we are ready to open this up for a Q&A, Aditi, if you're ready. Yes. So the question is, can a student transfer credits from India to a U.S. university? Yes, they can. I work with many students in this situation. Again, that's going to depend upon the transferable credit hours, which you can either determine using that transfer course equivalency guide. Maybe the institution will evaluate those credits prior to application, or you'll have those credits evaluated during the application process. But yes, student can transfer courses. And that's going to be honestly for any country. I work with students globally. Okay, so the next question is, I am 13 years old studying class 8. Please advise me how to prepare for my undergraduate studies in the US. So I know this presentation was solely discussing the transfer application process, but honestly the transfer freshman application process that I discussed is very similar to a freshman application process. So you're going to be submitting your mark sheet, so your high school mark sheet. That's going to be the big deciding factor for admission. You're going to want to take the SAT or the ACT exam. Most universities will require that for admission. You're also going to be submitting the copy of your main page of your passport, just like the transfer freshman. TOEFL or IELTS scores will also be required for new incoming freshmen. And the personal essay. So those are 5 things that I would encourage you to focus on as a undergraduate applicant. And really, since you're thinking about this early, which is wonderful, really start looking at SAT and ACT practice exams. You can find those online. You can Google them. You'll find many free options. And so I would encourage you to start practicing for those tests. Any other questions? Oh, okay. So I'm sorry I'm getting so close and this is a smaller font. Okay, I'm transferring from 3-year bachelor's degree to U.S. University and I've gone through the evaluation as well. It shows that I've completed 95 credit hours. Will the university accept all my credit hours? If not, then how can I know that how many of my credit hours will be accepted from that institution? Okay, so 95 credit hours going into an undergraduate program is a lot. I will say, for example, at the University of Arkansas, our maximum is 60. However, there is flexibility within that depending upon the program which they're implying. So it gets a little tricky when we're working with students who have over that 60 credit hours. I would encourage you, the institution in which you're applying, I would ask them this question directly. Let them know that you will have 95 credit hours and you would like to know what their maximum number is. They should be able to inform you of that. So you've already gone through the evaluation, so you submitted your transcripts. So that means they evaluated your transcripts. It's usually post-admission that the student finds out what course is transferred. I would also have you check to see if there are any transfer course equivalency guides, like for example the one I showed from the University of Arkansas. See if that institution has one of those as well. And so you personally will be able to go in there and look at that course equivalency guide to see, okay, this course will transfer, I know it transfers as this course, and really the only question you'll have at that point is how many of those courses will transfer. So if you go back to the previous slide, other resources. Okay, I'm going to go back and let me know, was it this one? I'll leave it on this slide. When does a student get to know whether any credits have been transferred and how many credits have been transferred? Is it immediately after admission or when the student arrives in his or her university? So it is going to be after admission unless that university has that transfer course equivalency guide or they have evaluated your transcripts prior to application. It will be post-admission. For example, at the University of Arkansas, our students, you're not going to receive a list, okay, of everything that transferred, but you will receive a number, so you'll know how many courses transferred. It is usually upon meeting with your academic advisor on campus that you know exactly, okay, this course transferred as this course. That's when you usually get the breakdown. But this is a question that you can absolutely ask when you're in that process. I think the universities would be flexible and they would be willing to help you to look into that, because if you need to know specifically before you arrive, I think they would be willing to help you. Okay, I have a 4-year bachelor's in pharmacy degree and a 2-year MBA in finance and marketing. Do I need to pursue graduation again if I want to do a master's in genetic engineering or pharmacy-related fields? So in your situation, because those fields are not, for example, your MBA and your bachelor's in pharmacy, they're not related fields, right? So because you have that bachelor's in pharmacy, you would probably be considering then a master's degree in some form of genetic engineering, if that's something that you want to pursue. If you did decide to go into pharmacy, that would be a medical school route. So then you'd be applying into medical school, which would be a different process of applying into a master's program. So I would encourage you to be looking at this program specifically, deciding if you want to maybe go more into a genetic engineering, genetics biology route, which would be a master's program, or if you would like to go more of a medical school route, which would be the pharmacy program. But you would be applying into graduate work, especially with your bachelor's degree. You'd be applying into a graduate program. That would be either a master's or medical school. Are there scholarships for only transferring international students? Yes, there are, and I'm going to speak specifically at the University of Arkansas. So our transfer students, there are scholarships just for transfer students. For us, our transfer scholarships are applicable for international students and domestic students, which we really think is wonderful, that international students can apply for all the same scholarships that domestic student can. Now, there are international scholarships just for our international students. Those aren't necessarily transfer scholarships, but there are international scholarships for our new incoming students. And that's going to vary across the board for institutions. You might Okay, so this is the type of transfer student that we were discussing earlier. So the transfer student, they have more than 24 transferable credit hours, okay? So that is different from the transfer freshman that you see above, who has less than 24 transferable credit hours. So that number is really going to depend upon the type of test scores you have to submit. So if you have more than 24 transferable credit hours, no, you do not need to submit SAT or ACT scores. Pardon me. And you may not also need to submit TOEFL or IELTS, depending upon your GPA and the grades you received in English Composition 1 and Composition 2. But if you're a transfer freshman, you have under the 24 transferable credit hours, yes, you will have to submit both TOEFL or IELTS scores and SAT or ACT scores. Okay, studying in the U.S. costs a lot per year. Can we also have the transfer path as cost savings? Studying in India for a couple of years and transfer the credits to study the next 2 years in the U.S.? Yes, you can. And students transferring internationally, domestically have the same mindset, honestly. It's usually cheaper for students, for example, in the U.S. to study at a community college and then transfer into a full-year institution. And it's going to be the exact same process. If you've completed 2 years, you're going to be a transfer student, most likely. Now, transferring from an institution from India, they're going to be looking at the courses that you've taken. They're going to determine if you need to submit TOEFL or IELTS scores. Most likely, you will have to submit TOEFL or IELTS if you are transferring from an institution outside of the U.S., depending upon if you've taken English Comp 1 or Comp 2. But it's going to be a very similar process for students transferring from a community college within the U.S. So yes, you absolutely can do that. Okay. And in my final year of BE Chemical Engineering, I wanted to shortlist my universities for fall 2017. My GRE score is 295. My TOEFL is on 13th November. Please guide me further. Okay. So it's great that you know your GRE score. I would encourage you to the universities in which you're applying. Look for, especially for chemical engineering, you should be able to find this specifically on those chemical engineering program websites for the universities in which you're applying. There should be a GRE required score listed. You're going to find that, especially at the graduate level, a lot of times the admission decision is made by the department, and that is very much the case at the University of Arkansas. It's kind of a two-way process. You're admitted into the graduate school, and then ultimately the final admission decision has to come from the department in which you're applying. Because the department is the one who's going to have the funding. They're going to be the ones who are looking for researchers, maybe teaching assistants. So it ultimately is the department's decision. So I would encourage you to look at these departments, these universities in which you're applying, look specifically at the chemical engineering department, and look to see if that GRE score is meeting the required score. And then I'm glad you're taking the TOEFL. That's going to be coming up soon because that's also going to be determining, admission as well. And also, if you don't meet that TOEFL requirement, check to see if those universities offer conditional admission, and make sure you're checking for your program of chemical engineering because that will be very important. Okay, so you're finding out a university has mentioned your GRE score requirement. That's unfortunate. I would contact the university directly. So you could contact someone who is in a similar role as I am, and they should be able to connect you with the graduate coordinator for that program. So each department is most likely going to have a graduate coordinator. They should be able to connect you with those department coordinators who will be able to discuss the GRE score requirements. Or maybe that university in which you're applying, they have a set GRE score, and they should be able to give you more information on that as well, and hopefully discuss what is required for their institution. Okay, last question. Oh, or was that left? Oh, there, okay. Is there early action, early decision, and regular deadline for transfer applicants? Yes and no, especially for students who are thinking about transfer scholarships. And I'm speaking on the experience I have at the University of Arkansas. There is a priority deadline for transfer or for all applicants. We really encourage even our transfer applicants to meet that priority deadline, especially for scholarships, because that's going to give them the best consideration for those scholarships. For admission, really not so much for transfer students. As long as they meet that admission deadline, we guarantee that they will have an admission decision for that semester. But that's something to look at specifically for each university, and I would definitely be looking into those scholarships when it comes to early action or early decision, because I know that's a big determining factor for students. So look at those for the scholarships. See if there's any priority deadlines for the transfer scholarships.
All right, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for doing
Oh, it's been my pleasure. I really enjoyed this. And if you guys have any questions, you got my contact information, so let me know.
and for the audience who joined us. Next week we will not be having a Friday webinar as for us. So do tune in the next Friday. Right. Thank you so much, everyone, for logging in.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.